Every February, we acknowledge the adversity and the struggles, the strength and the history of the Black experience in the United States, in Maryland, and here in Montgomery County. And we honor and celebrate the residents in our own community who've engaged in the political process, who've been activists, who've challenged the status quo, all in the effort to make our community more fair and equitable. And this year's theme of Black resistance recognizes African Americans' resistance to historic oppression in the pursuit of self-determination and equality. And it explores how members of the Black community have resisted and persisted through historic and ongoing oppression, from escaping the plantation to rising out of poverty and the struggle for equal housing and education, to fighting for voting rights. We know that the resistance and persistence continues into the 21st century. And the civil rights movement made some great strides, and it eventually led to the Black Lives Matter movement, which has championed criminal justice reform, teaching the real history in our classrooms, and making advancements in social and economic justice as well. And resistance has always been a powerful tool in the democratic process, particularly in the fight for racial equity and social justice. And we know that the struggle continues, and we here in Rockville are partners in that work. And so I welcome everybody today to the council as we celebrate Black History Month, and now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Councilmember Will Jawando.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for your remarks, and happy Black History Month to everyone, to my colleagues, and to everyone assembled here today. You know, I think this is one of the most important Black History Months we've had in a long time. Black history is under attack at this very moment. More than many states, it grows by the day, so I won't even give the number, but as of the end of last year, I think over 8 states had passed laws to stop the teaching of African American studies and history. Obviously, we've all seen the recent actions by the governor in Florida to challenge an AP African American studies course that had been worked on for over 10 years. One of the things you don't see in the headlines, deep experts, and had been piloted in 60 cities. Kids had already been taking this course to make a political point, but to really devalue and undervalue and undermine the history that is the African American story. It's important to remember that history is not just a collection of facts. It's a practice. It's a shared experience, a knowledge. It's the decision and choice that a society makes about who gets to tell the history and what that history is and what perspective it comes from. And we are at a moment in time where that's never been more important. Manning Marable, the historian, argued that Black history had 3 primary tasks: description, or the documentation of actual experiences of Black people in America; correction, tackling the mythologies and the stereotypes that were purposely put on Black people to keep them back and keep them from leadership positions; and using it to affect change through education so that we can know where we've come from and where we've been, and so that we can improve outcomes for not just Black Americans, but for the entire country. So here we are, a study, just 1964, you had the first African American study courses around Fisk University. Now we are under attack and being told we cannot tell our story at a time when it's really, really important. I'm thankful I live in a county and in a state that does want to tell the story, not only wants to tell it, wants to celebrate it, and wants to use it to inform how we do our work. And so that's why we're here today. And I'm excited for what's to come in this celebration and all the people who have come to join us. And I'll turn it back to my council president to turn to my colleague, Councilmember Sayles.
Thank you, and I will turn it over to Councilmember Sayles.
Thank you, President Glass. For this year's Black History Month theme, resistance, I am so proud to be here as the first Black woman and first of Jamaican heritage to be elected as a council member at large in Montgomery County, Maryland. I am the proud daughter of Jamaican parents who have dedicated their lives to public service and who have inspired my commitment to the sacred duty of serving our community. I would like to highlight the importance of political representation. Having a seat at the table offers the ultimate form of resistance, as it guarantees the voice of the communities who are leading the resistance are represented. If you are part of the discussion when policy is being formed, it allows you to offer your lived experiences to help form policies that uplift people as opposed to suppressing their voices. Like our late brother John Lewis championed, speak up, speak out, get in the way, get in good trouble, necessary trouble, and help redeem the soul of America. We owe it to ourselves, our children, and those before us to keep fighting for a seat at the table. Despite the many advancements we've made, issues of racial bigotry still impact our society today. Just recently, the young man Tyre Nichols joined George Floyd in a long line of others brutally murdered for simply being Black. Their deaths must not and will not be in vain. I hope my presence as the lone Black woman on the council can inspire the next generation to come out and be part of the solution to ending racial discrimination. For all those listening, walk into the room, join the table, take a seat, and as my Shiro, Shirley Chisholm, would say, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Let's make change happen everywhere where there's unfairness and inequality, and if necessary, let's make good trouble. Thank you, President Glass.
Thank you. I am glad that you have a seat at this dais, so thank you. Before we get to a wonderful video that has been produced, I do want to recognize Kathleen Connor and Joseph E. Young from Congressman Jamie Raskin's office, so thank you, and thank the Congressman. So now I'll turn it over to staff to play a video for us. That'll be about 12 minutes long.
Happy Black History Month. The national theme for 2023 is Black Resistance. Throughout history, African Americans have resisted ongoing systematic oppression in many forms, while also seeking to nurture and protect Black lives through various ways, including faith, education, fraternal and sororal orders, political representation, and activism. By resisting, Black people in America have achieved outstanding triumphs and maintained major successes. It all starts with faith, and it runs deep in the African American culture.
It predates slavery. Resistance started on the slave ships. We refused to leave our spirituality on the continent, and so it survived the Middle Passage. The first resistance was we will obey to survive, but we will go explore our God on our own. So we went to hush harbors, away from the master, to worship in our way. And the Black church was really born in these hush harbors. The community and the religion are always linked together, so that when emancipation finally happens, that tradition's already born. And that became a part of the story of Emory Grove as well.
Emory Grove was originally founded by freed African Americans in 1864. And Emory Grove United Methodist Church is one of the few remaining structures of the historic community.
This church's existence and the existence of the community in such a repressive environment by itself was resistance. Emory Grove was the center for almost 100 years of easily one of the largest African American camp meetings in the Mid-Atlantic. But it was also a very functional community that had a dance pavilion, a lit baseball field where Negro Leagues came and barnstormed, its own entertainment facility here called the Dewdrop Inn. Emery Grove underwent urban renewal when the town was actually destroyed. This church is now in the process of literally leading and rebuilding the town. To survive for a brighter day, that's resistance.
Carolyn Taylor grew up in the historic Emery Grove and remembers how it used to be before it was utterly destroyed.
It was a very interesting time when people really cared about each other, and that was the focus of your dignity and your pride, which was instilled in us. I think the resistance is that we're going to take care of each other. We're not going to be daunted. We're not going to be defeated. We're going to stand, and we're going to still pass our traditions down to the younger generations so that something will stand of what Emery Grove stood for.
As the late Malcolm X once said,
the burden rests upon the leaders of the Afro-American community to try and instill within the youth especially the desire to further their education, because without it, you're not going anywhere on this earth today.
education was a form of resistance then, and it still is today.
When you look at the history of African Americans, you'll know that from the beginning of time, education was the one thing that we were essentially kept away from. Society knew that if African Americans were educated, that we would use that education to further our freedom. And so we've been fighting against systems of oppression to keep us away from education for centuries, quite frankly.
The Emery Grove Consolidated Colored Elementary School was built in 1950 to consolidate education for African American students in the local region. This was about 4 years before the landmark Brown versus Board of Education. The school was later named Longview School, and today the building is used as an MCPS holding school.
So here we are today, still needing to embrace education in every way that we can to continue that legacy that so many fought for us to have.
With education comes African American sororities and fraternities, which have helped support the intellectual development of Black communities throughout American history. Some notable members of these organizations are in powerful leadership positions right here in Montgomery County. Members of the Divine Nine and Greek letter organizations have played a significant role in providing resources since the early 1900s. Each were established with unique core values, but share a common goal: to educate and uplift Black communities.
Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, just to give you a little background, was founded on the campus of Howard University on January 15th, 1908. The chapter in Montgomery County, Theta Omega Omega chapter, was chartered in 1969 by 32 women who lived in Montgomery County that really focus on voter registration, supporting legislation that affects the African American community, and reminding people to vote, how to register, how to make sure your registration's up to date. We have a youth leadership program, and I think that will go towards Black resistance by giving youth that confidence to get out there in public and speak up and speak out. In terms of our members who are probably very well known for their work towards the Black resistance, I would say Coretta Scott King, who was an honorary member of the sorority, but we all know the work that she did throughout her lifetime to help the African American community, but she's one among many.
Alpha Alpha was founded at Cornell University, 1906, the first of the Black Greek letter organizations. Our first resistance, so to speak, is resisting the issues of racism that were attacking the men at Cornell. So the things that we were involved in from the very, very beginning as a fraternity were education and then leadership, and doing those things necessary to raise the level of access of our communities to the full economic and social structures of the country. I was told that alphas are the first, the best, or the greatest in every field. And then they pointed out people like Thurgood Marshall and Dr. Martin Luther King. County Executive Ike Leggett is in our chapter. We have had 2 chiefs of police in our chapter. Resistance is not just pushing back, but to push forward, to change things, and that was our modus operandi.
Some of the Divine Nine members also serve on the Montgomery County Council.
I'm a proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the oldest Black fraternity founded in 1906 on the campus of Cornell University.
I am such a proud member of the Montgomery County Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, one of the Divine Nine members.
Both council members are prime examples as to why political representation matters and is another form of Black resistance.
Political representation is really important, particularly for the Black community. If you look at the period after the Civil War and Reconstruction, we had over 2,000 Black elected officials throughout the country, but that was all wiped away by Jim Crow. And you went to a point where you almost had no political representation by African Americans. Not only did they not have political representation, you didn't have access to the vote. And that had devastating consequences. The policies that we've seen over the years, redlining, segregation of schools, disinvestment in communities, poor water systems, things that we're still dealing with today in places like Flint and Baltimore, and go down the line.
These forms of resistance, whether it's through picket lines or peaceful assemblies, have always resulted in a push to policy making. This adds another opportunity for us to solicit revenue from short-term rentals. You know, that's what attracted me to policy making and allowed me to, serve in this position, was the history of resisting policies that don't work for our community and ensuring that we assemble the right people to have a seat at the table.
You need a lot of political will to get it done. And I think that's an important part of representation and resistance too, is that we can't just get one or two people in office. We've got to keep working with them, because those same systems that kept us out of office, that kept us from voting, are still active, and we must be just as active in counteracting them.
I will forever stand in solidarity with the resistance, and just because I have a seat at the table, it doesn't mean that struggle ends.
With political representation comes some form of activism, something civil rights activist and the late former United States Congressman John Lewis referred to as good trouble. Right here in Montgomery County, you'll find some who have done their part to resist against oppression. That includes Miss Willie Pearl Mackey King, a former member of the executive staff for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. She worked for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and helped transcribe his letter from a Birmingham jail.
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
I was there with him when he went to jail. I actually saw him handcuffed and put in the jail. I was frightened, but at the same time, I was dedicated to being with Dr. King in that movement, to try and do something to help our people. He asked for paper and pen in the jailhouse, and he was told, according to him, that this is not a library, you're in jail. So they gave him nothing to write with, write on. So Dr. King started to write on the edges of the newspaper, and toilet paper, paper napkins, greasy sandwich bags, anything that he could find to write on. In the meantime, Clarence Jones would slip that out of the jail under his jacket, give it to Wyatt Walker or to me, and it was my job then to type it. And that was the beginning of the Birmingham jail letter. And what he wanted to convey to people is, it is now time for waiting to be put aside. We cannot wait any longer. When we boycotted, that was a form of resistance. If we said we're going to march in the streets, and we do that still, then that's a form of resistance today. And that's what we use to resist the things that are happening that are not supposed to be happening to us.
Although resistance against oppression continues, that won't dim the light for the bright future of African Americans.
I love it. That was awesome. Please give another round of applause for Jordan Lindsay and the communications team. Beautiful, beautiful. So now I'm going to open it up for comments from all of my colleagues before we get to hear from some of you. And we'll start with Councilmember Luedtke and just go down the row.
Thank you so much, Council President Glass and Council Members Jawando and Sales for leading our Black History Month celebration. And thank you to all the incredible leaders and community members who've gathered here today. It's really fun when you're in the middle of something else to see all these friendly faces coming in and filling these seats, because these are folks you know who are passionate about our community, who are passionate about doing good work, and who are always showing up for others. So thank you. I live in Ashton, so I live right next door to Sandy Spring, and that Sandy Spring community's history is Black history. We have some of the first African Americans in our county to own property were in Sandy Spring. That was Richard Bott, Josiah Beans, Henry and David Biggerly, and that was in 1793. Think about how unique Sandy Spring was at that time. Shouldn't have been unique, but was unique. There was a community of Black tenant farmers, laborers, domestic workers, blacksmiths, carpenters, and other trades folks who, along with the enslaved Black community in Montgomery County at that time, made up, in about 1860, 30% of the county's population. They built Sandy Spring. They built Montgomery County. In 1822, the Sandy Spring Black community established a Sharp Street Methodist Episcopal Church, which is the oldest Black church in Montgomery County and just celebrated its 200-year anniversary and fellowship. I think it was last month, maybe last month, wasn't that long ago. And here in Sandy Spring and around Sandy Spring community after emancipation, additional Black communities sprung up despite the inequalities they were facing and despite the challenges going on throughout the state of Maryland. In Sandy Spring, they found community. And so I am grateful for that. I'm grateful for those who continued the work of the community, like Ross Body, who our community center is named after there in Sandy Spring, who was an educator. He was a teaching principal in a 3-room school in Sandy Spring. It had no bathroom. It had no books. He continued and he persisted on, and that came to be the new, bigger Sandy Spring Elementary School in 1952. And after desegregation, he served the Sandy Spring community at the Recreation Center at Sherwood High School in one of the most impactful careers that Montgomery County government has probably ever seen, and then passed on that legacy of service and education to his son, Troy, who served as Director of Equity for MCPS. So I take that very seriously, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity we have here today to recognize and celebrate it, and that we live in a community that allows us to recognize and celebrate that and does not try to bury the past. Thank you.
Councilmember Mink.
Hi, I'm sure we'll be glad to have conversations following our remarks and the conclusion of this. Thank you to all of you who are gathered here today. I see leaders from my district, Friends of White Oak are here, Burtonsville Elementary School PTA. These are fantastic Black-led, Black-majority community organizations that are doing transformative work to uplift the priorities of our neighborhoods. Jeru Bande is here, East County's Community Regional Services Director. And I just wanted to name that I'm representing District 5, which is a Black plurality district. We have the largest percentage of Black residents of any of the districts in Montgomery County. And I'm tremendously proud to represent this district. I also recognize the tremendous responsibility that this comes with, and as well as the tremendous responsibility that we all have to ensure that we are properly listening to, engaging with, uplifting, and prioritizing marginalized voices, including and especially the Black community, and especially at a time like this when Black history and the Black community is, as Councilmember Jawando pointed out, absolutely and unquestionably under attack. So I wanted to take this moment to recognize that part of that for myself, and I think for all of us, and especially our non-Black members, is welcoming and appreciating and leaning into and engaging with efforts by our Black colleagues and our Black community members to hold us accountable where needed. That is something that we appreciate and lean into, and that I know that I appreciate and I lean into. And also, tied into that we recognize that part of the Black history in our country here has been the prioritization of white comfort. And that has a tremendous impact on how we all engage in these spaces, and especially in seats of power. And so I just wanted to state that plainly, because that is a reality that we sit with. And so we cannot change something if we can't acknowledge it. So I appreciate all of you tremendously for being here today, for uplifting Black voices and Black community members, for all of your efforts to hold myself and other colleagues accountable for our decisions, and for all of us being willing to disrupt white comfort where needed is an essential part of resistance. So thank you all, and I will turn it over to my colleagues.
Thank you. Councilmember Albornoz. Councilmember Albornoz.
Thank you. Well, hello, good and blessed people. It is wonderful to be with all of you this morning. I am County Councilmember Gabe Albornoz, proud chair of the Health and Human Services Committee and a proud disciple of Ike Leggett. He was one of my most important mentors, and in our not too recent past history here in Montgomery County, as Ike talks about often, in his first political campaign, he chose not to use his own image in his publications. While we've come a long way, we know there is still a long way to go. And I do want to recognize the council members who served before us so ably here in Montgomery County. In addition to Ike Leggett, I want to recognize Valerie Irvin, Cherie Branson, who is in the audience today, Craig Rice, let's give it up for Cherie, and say what an honor and privilege it is to serve alongside council members Jawando and Sales. We will work together to address many of the disparities that continue to exist and persist here in Montgomery County. And I want to highlight and recognize the incredible work of the African American Health Program and Dr. Keisha Davis and Dr. Bridgers and all of our Black leaders that are working to recognize the importance of health equity here in Montgomery County. I am deeply committed to that work, and I want to recognize the incredible leaders that we have in the audience here today. Councilmember Jawando said it well. Black history is American history, and there are policymakers around this country that would do well to remember that. We will never forget that here in Montgomery County, and I want to thank all of you here in the audience who have made and continue to make remarkable contributions, not just to the Black community, but to our entire community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Council Vice President Friedson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues. As we've heard today, there is no American history without Black history. There is no Montgomery County history without Black history. It's not lost on me. I know it's not lost on any of our colleagues that we are sitting in a building where the old Rockville jail was, where 2 of the 3 murders by lynching that have been documented took place. Mr. John Diggs Dorsey, Mr. Sidney Randolph, pulled out from this building, from this land where the building stood, and murdered by a mob. Not lost on us that we carry on that legacy, and we carry on the legacy of others, the rich and storied history that continues today, the legacy of people like Josiah Henson, the legacy of those council members that Councilmember Albernaz just noticed, those community leaders who continue that resistance and that persistence in the face of unthinkable adversity and challenge. The local leaders who are here in this room who continue to bear that burden and continue to move forward. We heard in the video that the resistance is not just about pushing back, it's about pushing forward. And there are so many leaders in this room, so many incredible people in this room who, by showing up here today, by showing up in rooms for decades and decades, have been part of that resistance and part of that persistence and part of what has made our county what it is. We have work to do. We have made some progress, but there is a lot more progress to be made. We are all committed to that. I am deeply humbled to be able to serve on this dais, to continue that work, to be able to stand alongside and to serve with my friend Will Jawando and my friend Lorianne Sales and all of us. And we work together with you, committed to carry on the legacy, to make sure that that pushing back is also pushing forward as we move forward. Today, as we commemorate and celebrate, important that we do both. We, in the words of Frederick Douglass, have to do with our past only as we can make it useful for the present and for the future. And so to that present, we honor you, we thank you. To that past, we honor them and we thank them. And to that future, we move forward together. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Balcom.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for coming here today to commemorate Black History Month. It's so great to see so many familiar faces and to meet new faces. I am so proud to be part of the most diverse council in the history of our county. That's something that we should all be proud of. And now it's our responsibility to continue to resist oppression and to ensure equity in all realms, including our thriving economy. In my work with small businesses during the pandemic, we found out that not everyone had a seat at the table, which meant that so many people were left out of getting critical funding and critical support during COVID. They didn't get the state and county and federal aid that they needed. And we decided to do what Councilmember Sales reminded us to do, pulled up a chair and created a program, our Pathways program for women and minority-owned businesses, to make sure that we did a very small part of leveling the playing field. We cannot have true equality until we have economic justice and equality. And I want to welcome some of the graduates here today. It's so nice to see you here in the audience, and to personally thank you for your trust in the program and for making it such a huge success. I am and will always be overwhelmed by your expertise, your hard work, your dedication to making our economy strong and vibrant, and everything that you do as business owners. And we cannot forget that small business is the backbone of our economy, and you are those workers to make that happen. I miss you, I love you, and I'm so glad you're here today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez.
Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Fanny Gonzalez, and I am so happy to see so many familiar faces. I know everybody's saying that, but I also mean it, and I feel I had to say it. I will say one thing. I'm not really good giving speeches. I really don't like it. I'm in that terrible line of work, I guess. I grew up with the understanding from my mom and my dad that when you are given an opportunity, you must use your power to make a difference. So when I was on the Park and Planning Commission, I was a vice chair of the planning board back, and I left in 2021. We were working on a particular master plan called the Leetonsville Master Plan, which is near downtown Silver Spring. There is a significant Black and brown community with businesses there. And there was a light industry zone in that area. And that's one of the stops for the Purple Line. And what some of my colleagues wanted to do was to change the zoning to make it mixed use, which meant that some of these, businesses that were owned by Black and brown communities will have been displaced. I was not gonna have it. So I reached out to the community and I convinced not all of them, my colleagues to preserve the light industry zone, because when you have an active sector that is doing great things and with communities that are not just working there, but living in the community, we need to actually support them, not displace them. So I'm taking that power to the county council. I'm the chair of the Economic Development Committee. Thank you again, President Glass, for giving me that position. I'm really thankful. And the first thing I did in my first session was to call on a joint session with the Economic Development and Education Committee, which is chaired by Councilmember Yawando. It really upsets me and frustrates me that when you look at the performance data from children in second grade, third grade, fourth grade, it is the Black and brown kids who look like me, who look like Will, who look like many of you, are doing the worst. And it's happening right now in front of our eyes. This is the future workforce. So it's not about warming up the seat and saying that I'm here. It's about really making a difference and making a change. So we need you to be involved in transforming our economy, our education system, to really uplift Black and brown kids. And I'm sorry if I'm focused on that community, but it's the community that we need to focus on so they can thrive. I didn't want to do a speech, but I think I did. So thank you.
You succeeded, yes. Yeah. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think you underestimate your your passion. Thank you, everyone. I'm glad to see everyone here today and to see some of my neighbors coming out from District 4. I'm very proud to represent District 4, and looking out at all of you today, I'm reminded of the diversity that we have in the Black community in Montgomery County, and in particular in District 4. We have one of the largest populations of African immigrants in the United States. We have Black Caribbean immigrants and a significant portion of African American residents. And as we celebrate Black History Month, we must acknowledge the diversity within our community. And we must also acknowledge that through policies that have been implemented throughout our history, we have created disparities. And these disparities reverberate throughout all aspects of life. Home ownership, education, as my colleague just said, health, interactions with the justice system, access to generational wealth. So while we celebrate today the amazing contributions the Black community has made here in Montgomery County, and as many of you have made to our county and across the country, we also have to own the work that needs to be done to address the built systems that have excluded Black residents from opportunities and have created disparities. Each year during Black History Month, the Blair High School puts on a production of Sankofa. And if you have not had the opportunity to see it, it's actually taking place this month. Tickets, I think, are on sale now, so you can get them. And Sankofa is an African word which literally means to retrieve, go back and get. And it's about remembering the history so that we can move forward. So as we celebrate Black History Month, we must remember to look back, to not only celebrate, but to acknowledge and pledge to make changes so we can all move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And thank you to my colleagues, Councilmember Jawando and Councilmember Sales, and to our county staff for the truly wonderful tribute that you produced today. And being one of the last council members to speak, I know that I'm between us and eating. So I'm going to remember that. But of all the celebrations that I'm involved in, and I've been involved in a few over the years, I can personally say that this is one of the best, perhaps it is the best, that I remember. I see people in this room who have known me since grade school. I'm not going to point you out because maybe you don't want to tell everybody how old you are. I know how old you are. And of course, I, along with many of my colleagues in this room, have been involved in Montgomery County since the very beginning of integration, when it was integrated in 1950 for the Montgomery County Public Schools in 1956 in the Up County. I went to Longview Elementary from Gaithersburg Elementary. And I have said, and many of you in this room have heard me say, that yes, Montgomery County Public Schools did integrate, but Montgomery County did not integrate in 1956. And I always see head shaking when I do that, because that is absolutely true. It's a sad truth, but a truth it is. And I know that I have truly been blessed in my life by having the friends that I have, some of whom I speak to several times a week, who have been mentors of mine throughout, who have told me, when I always said that, that one of my great advantages in life is that people have been kind enough to tell me when I'm stupid. When I always joke that when I became mayor of Gaithersburg, people laughed at my jokes more because they wanted to be my friends, but they wouldn't tell me when I had made errors. And that's not a great help. And there's people in this room that certainly have told me when I'm stupid, and I appreciate that. I do. Will leaned over to me during this, and I'm going to stop, Mr. President. I know you said, but Will leaned over to me during this when he talked about Emery Grove, and he said, don't start crying, because he and I will cry together on various things. Emery Grove is something that should have brought tears to Montgomery County years ago. I saw it. I lived it. And we have finally started to revitalize Emery Grove, and it's because of people in this room. But we need to make certain that we learn from our horrendous history. We need to make certain that we appreciate that we should never do something like that again. And we need to make certain that by working together, we're going to have that better life for everyone in Montgomery County. Thank you all for everything you do. Thank you. And I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. There are still a few more things that we need to celebrate and honors that need to be made before we get to lunch. But now I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Jawando so that we can start the reading of the proclamation. Let's do it here because everybody has a part. Yep.
All right. We're going to read the proclamation, and then we will have brief comments from some of the folks in the video, and then we'll go to lunch. I'll start us and finish us here. Whereas February is National Black History Month, which recognizes and honors contributions that African Americans have made to this country, as well as the events and history of the African diaspora. And
whereas on January 1st, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, setting the United States on a path to end slavery. And 1 century later, in 1963, more than 200,000 Americans gathered for the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, calling for African American civil and economic rights. And
whereas Black History Month had its beginnings in the United States in 1926, when Black educator and historian Carter G. Woodson moved to officially recognize the achievements and contributions of African Americans to our nation's history and identity. And
whereas Black history is complicated, and unlike any other story ever told, enslaved Africans were brought to this country under brutal conditions, and those who survived from generations of people have become educators, doctors, scientists, and world changers. And
whereas Maryland is home to African American heroes like Frederick Douglass, Josiah Henson, Harriet Tubman, and Thurgood Marshall, who paved the way for the young activists of today who continue to fight for racial equity, freedom, social justice, and
Black Americans have contributed significantly to the growth and development of the nation in Montgomery County through distinguished leadership in every field of human endeavor. And
whereas this year's National Black History Month theme is Black Resistance, highlighting how African Americans have united throughout generations to defeat systematic oppression while seeking ways to nurture and protect Black lives. And
Whereas black faith institutions are spaces where black communities have always met to organize resistance efforts and inspired people to participate in resistance movements, and have offered sanctuary during times of crisis. And
whereas education is a form of black resistance, historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs, emerged as a space for the formation of activists, artists, business owners, educators, and more, and their continued operation have stood as a testament to black investment and creative thinking in the face of the changing landscape of higher education. And
whereas black fraternities and sororities have played a significant role in providing resources to uplift black communities and resist oppression since the early 1900s. These organizations have worked to support the intellectual development of black communities nationwide through the Jim Crow era, the Civil Rights Movement, and even today. And
whereas throughout our shared history, black people have worked to develop political representation through activism and inclusive legislation to seek their rightful space in this country and resist oppression.
Now, therefore, be it resolved, the County Council of Montgomery County, Maryland hereby proclaims February as Black History Month. And be it further resolved that all residents are encouraged to recognize the outstanding services of our African Americans who have greatly enriched our community. Presented this day, the 7th of February in the year 2023, signed by the Council President and myself and Councilmember Sayles on behalf of all of our colleagues. Happy Black History Month.
Now I'll turn it over back to Councilmember Jawando to introduce our guests for a few brief remarks.
She's calling you.
Councilmember Sayles to come down as well. It was mentioned, we have this council form of government since 1968 or so. There have been 5 black council members that elected and 1 appointed. So 6 total. 3 of the 6 are in the room. Not enough, but importance to note, and we're very thankful. I appreciate Councilmember Aronoz for mentioning everyone's name. So we're going to hear 1 minute or so, and we got a preacher coming first, so he's going to lead by example. Reverend Timothy Warner, who's the pastor of Emory Grove United Methodist Church, for brief remarks. Come on up.
It's a long minute. Right?
Yeah. Long minute, I can do a lot in it.
First, I need to say how grateful we as a community and I as a leader are to the council for all that the council has done, and for this recognition that uplifts not just me as a leader, but our entire community. The community where I serve has such a deep and rich history that it deserves every day to be lifted up by this county and further beyond. But I'd like to say today that while we are a very progressive county in Montgomery County, we still need to do a lot of work to reckon with the structural racism that we participated in over the years that literally destroyed 40-plus communities within the bounds of our county. We at the church are leading in the reweaving of the fabric of that community. It was destroyed by urban renewal throughout the 70s, but and we're happy to be doing that. That is our work. We believe from God to do that work. but having assumed that work, it is the work of county government now to do some more planful and systematic and transparent work, structural work, to reweave, to graft rather the fabric that we are recreating back into the tapestry that is Montgomery County. That's work that has to be intentional. It has to come with budget. It has to come with votes. And we hope that that work will continue. Thank you again for the recognition, and I look forward to working with each of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Warner. Next, we're going to have Carolyn Taylor from Historic Emory Grove and president of the Rotary Club of Historic Emery Grove. Thank you.
Thank you to President Glass and to the entire council who has heard the Emery Grove story before. So we don't have to repeat that, but you know what the struggle was. And I believe that the resistance was that we were determined as a community to be in charge and control of our own lives, using our own power, maintaining dignity and pride, walking with your head up high with a smile, but teaching your children at home, because we sent them out into the world to learn, but we had to teach them at home. And so we continue in my capacity and the capacity of the pastor, Reverend Warner, to insist that people know their history, that they investigate their history, and that they pass it on. And that is where the power is, that is where the resistance is that we will not be defeated. We're gonna keep on teaching, we're gonna keep on preaching, we're gonna keep on remembering, not going back, but building on the past for our future. Thank you very much.
Next, we're going to bring up my fraternity brother, who hopefully notices my clothing today. Brother Kenneth Clark, who's the former president of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Iota Upsilon Lambda chapter, our chapter, to bring remarks from his perspective. Brother Clark.
Good morning, Council President Glass, other council members. In case you don't know, the colors of Alpha Phi Alpha are black and gold, and our brother is resplendent in those colors. One of our founders said years ago that out of our need, our fraternity brought social purpose and social action. To use today's phrase, out of our need for resistance came social action, and that is the purpose of Alpha Phi Alpha in this community. I'd be remiss if we didn't recognize brothers of our fraternity who, our chapter having started in 1970, new to the game by comparison to Emery Grove, but our action with brothers like Hanley Normant, Bob Hatchell, Roscoe Nix, Devance Walker, our current president, Kevin Johnson, are all here, or have all been here, to try to raise the perspective of our community. One of the things that Brother Jawando talked about was the erasure of Black history. One of the efforts that our chapter did to make sure that some parts of our history would not be erased is that we initiated the building of the Martin Luther King Memorial on the Mall. That idea started here. Our brother George Steele, a resident of our county, brought forth that recommendation to our chapter back in 1983. It took us a long time to get it done, but it got done. So that memorial would take a lot to get that erased. So we want to be sure that we do those things. Our building of our remodeling of the Smithfield School as a model of education, as a representative of education in our county. That Black Smithfield Colored School is now, with the county funds and our work, a community service location available for the community to look at. So we appreciate having that help from the county to make that happen. So we've been here, we are here, and Alpha Phi Alpha plans to be here into the future to help our county grow. Thank you.
Dr. Monifa McKnight is at a school board hearing this morning, but she would have been our fourth speaker, a representative of the group, obviously a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, as is my wife. And so we want to just thank everyone for coming to celebrate. I think we're going to take a picture. Oh, do you want to give remarks in her stead? Yes, come on up. Our president of the Theta Omega Omega chapter, who's also named Michelle.
Good afternoon. My remarks are going to be brief because it is lunchtime, but I do want to say thank you. And as stated, I'm Michelle McNeil Gill, the president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Theta Omega Omega chapter. serving primarily the southern part of Montgomery County. We are the first Black Greek letter organization chartered in Montgomery County back in 1969, so we're 53 years old, and we've worked hard through to provide service to the county through education, which supports Black resistance, through voter registration, voter education, and you heard my remarks on the video, which I appreciate the opportunity to participate in. The proclamation means so much. This whole event means so much, because I'm thinking, gee, I should be at work, but I'm so glad I'm here today. Wouldn't have missed it, and appreciate all the kind words in the proclamation. Thank you.
So we're going to ask the rest of the council to come down, and anyone else who would like to join the picture to join us, please.